In 2004, Cohen had already achieved what most programmers only dream of, creating a protocol so revolutionary that it fundamentally changed how the world shared digital files. BitTorrent, his peer-to-peer file-sharing protocol, was being used by millions of people across the globe to download everything from Linux distributions to the latest episodes of their favorite TV shows. The protocol was elegant, efficient, and unstoppable. Yet when Cohen founded BitTorrent Inc. to commercialize his creation, he was about to embark on a 14-year journey that would prove one of the most fundamental truths in tech. Inventing something revolutionary and building a successful business around it are two completely different skills. This is the story of how the company behind one of the internet's most important protocols managed to fail spectacularly at monetizing its own invention, burning through tens of millions in venture capital while watching pirates, competitors, and free alternatives feast on the technology they created. The BitTorrent protocol itself was nothing short of genius. Unlike traditional file sharing where users downloaded from a central server or single peer, BitTorrent created a swarm-based system where downloaders simultaneously became uploaders, sharing pieces of files with each other. This distributed approach made downloads faster as more people participated and virtually eliminated the single points of failure that plagued other systems. By 2005, BitTorrent traffic accounted for an estimated 35% of all internet traffic, making it one of the most widely adopted protocols in internet history. The problem wasn't the technology, it was absolutely revolutionary. The problem was that Cohen had created something so efficient at sharing files freely that building a profitable business model around it was like trying to sell water to fish. The very nature of BitTorrent's decentralized architecture meant that once the protocol was released into the wild, BitTorrent Inc. had virtually no control over how it was used or any meaningful way to extract revenue from its usage. Cohen's first major strategic mistake came in 2005 when he bowed to pressure from Hollywood studios and major record labels who were threatening legal action over rampant piracy using BitTorrent. Rather than finding innovative ways to work with content creators or developing legitimate use cases for the technology, Cohen made the fateful decision to remove torrent links from the official BitTorrent website and shut down several popular BitTorrent tracking sites. This move was intended to distance the company from piracy and make it more attractive to potential content partners, but it had the opposite effect. The decision alienated BitTorrent's core user base without winning over content creators, who remained suspicious of any technology associated with file sharing. Worse, it demonstrated a fundamental misunderstanding of the protocol's decentralized nature. Removing links from the official website did absolutely nothing to stop piracy, since thousands of independent torrent sites immediately filled the void, but it did send a clear message that BitTorrent Inc. was either unwilling or unable to defend its own technology. The company's attempts to pivot toward legitimate content distribution proved equally disastrous. In 2007, BitTorrent Inc. launched the BitTorrent Entertainment Network, a legal content distribution platform that was supposed to compete with iTunes by offering DRM-free music and video downloads using BitTorrent technology. The platform featured content from independent artists and smaller studios who were willing to experiment with new distribution methods. However, the execution was fundamentally flawed from the start. The user interface was clunky and confusing compared to iTunes' streamlined experience. The content library was sparse and filled with unknown artists. And perhaps most critically, the platform failed to leverage the one advantage BitTorrent actually had: the ability to distribute large files efficiently to massive audiences. Instead of focusing on use cases where BitTorrent's technical advantages were obvious, like distributing high-definition video files or large software packages, the company tried to compete directly with iTunes in the mainstream music market where BitTorrent's complexity was a liability rather than an asset. Meanwhile, the company's relationship with venture capital investors was becoming increasingly strained as BitTorrent Inc. burned through funding without showing meaningful revenue growth. Between 2005 and 2010, the company raised approximately $25 million across multiple funding rounds, but revenue remained anemic. The fundamental problem was that while millions of people used BitTorrent technology daily, almost none of them were paying BitTorrent Inc. for the privilege. The company had created a classic innovator's dilemma. Their free, open-source protocol was so successful that it cannibalized any potential market for their commercial products. Third-party BitTorrent clients like uTorrent, Azurius, and Transmission offered better user experiences than the official BitTorrent client, while independent torrent sites provided vastly more content than any legitimate alternative the company could assemble. BitTorrent Inc. found itself in the bizarre position of being almost irrelevant to the ecosystem built around their own technology. The situation became even more complicated in 2006 when BitTorrent Inc. acquired uTorrent, the most popular third-party BitTorrent client, for an undisclosed sum. The acquisition was intended to give the company more control over the BitTorrent ecosystem and provide a larger user base for monetization experiments. However, the integration proved to be a disaster that alienated users while failing to generate significant revenue. In 2012, BitTorrent Inc. began bundling unwanted software with uTorrent installations, including browser toolbars and other bloatware that users universally despised. When that failed to generate sufficient revenue, they introduced Bitcoin mining software that would use infected computers' processing power to mine cryptocurrency for the company's benefit. The mining software was installed without clear user consent and caused significant performance problems on affected machines. Security researchers began classifying uTorrent as potentially unwanted software, and major antivirus programs started flagging it as malware. The company had managed to transform the internet's most popular BitTorrent client into a widely distrusted piece of adware. Desperate for revenue, BitTorrent Inc. embarked on an increasingly erratic series of pivots that demonstrated how disconnected the company had become from both its technology strengths and market realities. In 2013, they launched BitTorrent Sync, a peer-to-peer file synchronization service that competed directly with Dropbox and Google Drive. While the technology was solid and offered better privacy than cloud-based alternatives, the company failed to articulate why consumers should choose a complex peer-to-peer solution over simple, reliable cloud storage. The marketing was confused, the pricing model was unclear, and the user experience was inferior to established competitors. When BitTorrent Sync failed to gain traction, the company rebranded it as Resilio Sync and eventually spun it off as a separate company. In 2016, they launched BitTorrent Live, a peer-to-peer live streaming platform that was supposed to compete with Twitch and YouTube Live. The platform burned through millions in development costs, but never attracted a meaningful audience or content creator base before being quietly shuttered in 2018. Perhaps the most telling example of BitTorrent Inc.'s strategic confusion came with their attempts to enter the content creation business. In 2014, the company began producing original web series and documentaries, apparently believing that becoming a content creator would solve their distribution problems. They released series like Children of the Machine and Power Rangers, a dark, unauthorized fan film based on the Power Rangers franchise that generated brief viral attention before being removed due to copyright concerns. The content strategy made no strategic sense for a technology company and demonstrated a fundamental misunderstanding of both the entertainment industry and their own competitive advantages. Rather than focusing on being the best technology platform for content distribution, they were trying to compete with Netflix and YouTube in content creation, an area where they had no expertise, no relationships, and no sustainable competitive advantage. The company's final major pivot attempt came in 2017 when they jumped aboard the cryptocurrency bandwagon, announcing plans to launch their own blockchain-based token called BTT Token. The token was supposed to incentivize file sharing by rewarding users who seeded popular torrents with cryptocurrency that could be exchanged for faster download speeds or premium features. While the concept had some theoretical merit, the execution was deeply flawed and the timing was terrible. The announcement came just as the cryptocurrency bubble was beginning to deflate, regulatory scrutiny of token offerings was intensifying, and public skepticism about blockchain solutions was growing. More fundamentally, the token system failed to address BitTorrent Inc.'s core problem. They still had no meaningful control over the broader BitTorrent ecosystem, and most users were perfectly happy with existing free alternatives that didn't require cryptocurrency transactions. By 2018, after 14 years of failed pivots, alienated users, and burned investor capital, BitTorrent Inc. was acquired by Turon Foundation, a blockchain company founded by Justin Sun, for approximately $120 million. The acquisition price seemed generous given BitTorrent Inc.'s poor financial performance, but it reflected the enduring value of the BitTorrent brand and user base rather than the company's business prospects. Under Tron's ownership, the BTT token project moved forward, but it failed to revitalize either BitTorrent's user engagement or revenue generation. The fundamental problems that had plagued BitTorrent Inc. for over a decade remained unsolved. The protocol was too decentralized to control, the user base was too accustomed to free alternatives to pay for premium features, and the company had never developed a sustainable competitive advantage beyond the initial protocol innovation. The failure of BitTorrent Inc. represents one of the most instructive cautionary tales in the history of technology commercialization. Cohen's BitTorrent protocol was genuinely revolutionary, solving real technical problems and enabling new possibilities for content distribution that simply hadn't existed before. However, creating breakthrough technology is only the first step in building a successful company, and in many ways, it may actually be the easiest step. BitTorrent Inc.'s 14-year struggle to monetize their innovation illustrates the critical importance of business model innovation, market timing, strategic focus, and understanding your customers' actual needs rather than what you think they should want. The company's failure wasn't due to lack of technical talent, insufficient funding, or even market conditions. It was due to a fundamental mismatch between the technology they created and the business models they attempted to build around it. In creating a protocol that made centralized control impossible, they had inadvertently made traditional software business models impossible as well. The tragedy isn't that BitTorrent the protocol failed. It succeeded beyond anyone's wildest dreams and continues to power a significant portion of internet traffic today. The tragedy is that BitTorrent Inc., the company founded by the protocol's creator, never figured out how to capture even a tiny fraction of the value their innovation created. Instead, they spent 14 years watching from the sidelines as their own technology transformed the world without them.